Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. We are on the eve of the Border-Gavaskar Test Series beginning in Perth. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, and pretty much in 48 hours' time, we'll see the first ball between India and Australia. I can't wait. I think it's going to be an absolutely cracking series. Just start off with a talking point at the top. There's been a lot of discussion around whether this series has reached the heights of the Ashes. Now, I'm joined by Daniel Beswick from the Emerging Cricket Podcast. Daniel, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Keen, to dive in. In terms of anticipation, I think it's got to be one of the most anticipated series this millennium. We could probably debate about that, but yeah, looking forward to discussing all of it today.
Yeah, I started going into the discussion without introducing you guys. Gav, Joshy, welcome back to the show.
Hello, Manners. Yes, I think this series is bigger than the Ashes.
Wow.
Purely because India's competitive. I mean, England haven't won a series down here for a while. They haven't even won a test match down here for a while. So pure in terms of results and the spectacle, and of course, in terms of viewership, I mean, billion people will be tuned in across the subcontinent and more Indian expats around the world. So I think it's actually bigger than the Ashes.
Wow, bigger than the Ashes. Great call from Gav early on. I agree with you that the cricket has been more competitive than the Ashes. I will say culturally, I think both England and Australia get more gripped by Ashes fever than when Australia plays in India. I don't think Australia gets quite the same sort of cultural, reach, because I think there are casual fans in Australia that just want to beat the Poms. It's sort of ingrained to us from an early age. But I agree with you in terms of cricket and sort of the rivalry between the two countries. It is not far behind.
I think you summed it up perfectly there, Menas. That's why you're the host. That's why you're the godfather of this podcast.
Another thing, before we get into the preview of the first test match, there's been some consternation with the IPL deciding to hold their auction during the first test. So practically that means I think Justin Langer and Ricky Ponting are leaving after the first day of the test and leaving their commentary duties and flying to the Middle East for the auction. I think it's in Dubai this time.
It's Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, it's in Jeddah.
In Jeddah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So they're flying to Saudi Arabia for the auction, and then they're coming back. Also, it means you can imagine some players staying up and wanting to see what they go for. And I was thinking about it also. Like, even if you're the sort of player that's like, I'm really into this test match, I'll just wake up and see what I've gone for. You actually might not be able to sleep. Like, if you've got millions of dollars at stake, good luck trying to go to sleep. I mean, Gav, our insider, why would they hold it during a test match?
I think it's just the way it's been set up. I think next week or something, within something with the BCCI, the domestic season kicking off as well in India. I believe there's a bit of a break at the moment within the Ranji Trophy and the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy, which is the T20 trophy, which is a little bit surprising because they probably want to have that before the auction. But I believe that's one of the reasons. There could be more to it. I'm not aware, but that's the most practical reason.
Daniel, what do you think? A bit strange.
Is it just the BCCI looking to kind of keep the real estate of attention on IPL eyes while there's some other cricket going around? It's a strange one because, I mean, you don't want to take away too much from the test series. And in saying that, I mean, from a time zone perspective, there's not a whole lot of actual overlap. It's more just the availability of the coaching and the staff. It just puts Ricky and JL and the likes of those guys in a slightly awkward spot. I think that's really the only sort of downside in all of it, right?
And I believe the IPL auction actually starts after the test match is finished as well. So, and don't forget the IPL auction, I think that's broadcast on Star Sports, and so is the series as well. So it's a bit of a Star Sports broadcasting, perfect sell kind of thing to all the audience that stick to Star Sports. So the broadcasters have probably got their wishes as well, Menas.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right. Well, let's get into the series predictions and the first test preview. I mean, Australia's side is so settled. There's a lot more question marks over the Indian 11, but I think you can pretty much you can write down the Aussie 11 now. And unless there's any injury concerns, we know who will line up for the Aussies. But for India, more question marks. So reports are that KL Rahul will open the batting with Jaiswal while Rohit Sharma's missing the first test. And then Padikar will maybe bat 3 with Kohli 4, Pant 5, and Jurel at 6. Gav, how does that top 6 sound to you?
Yeah, it sounds perfect. I think that's probably the top 6 we're going to get. I can assure you, I think Padikar's definite starter. From what I've heard from my sources, there was some whispers about Virat Kohli being told to go at number 3. Now they might have been squashed now, especially with Padikar coming in. They would maybe Jurel was going to go to 4. If they were going to play Sarfraz, or they were going to play a bowling order around like a Reddy, but I believe with Padikar starting, I think Kohli will go back to 4. But they were talking about it. We saw Kohli bat at number 3 in that first test against New Zealand, and there were some whispers coming out of Perth. But I believe with Padikar coming in, left-hander as well, he's played pretty well in the A Tour. I think he probably nailed, top 6 there. Jadeja, I think 7. There's debate whether they play Ashwin. From what I'm guessing, I think India are going to play 2 spinners, Ashwin and Jadeja, and the 3 quicks will be Bumrah, Siraj, and I think Prashid Krishna is going to get the nod ahead of anybody else.
So, Gav, you don't think they'll play a fast bowling all-rounder or an all-rounder that bowls medium pace is it Reddy?
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think so. From my information, I think they're going to go with a bit of experience. So I think they're going to play Ashwin and Jadeja. And given it's the first Test match, Krishna, he's bowled a lot of overs as well with the A Tour, and it's the first Test match that they can push the bowlers a little bit. So and play the 2 spinners. So I think Gambier's prepared to take that chance, and so is Bumrah. So yep, I think India's playing Jadeja and Ashwin.
Interesting. Gav, I'm going to throw this question to Daniel, but can you just take? I think your headset's just giving us a slight bit of interference. You just want to take it out while Daniel's answering this question. Just use it straight from the phone. All right, Daniel, what do you think of that Indian top 6?
It's kind of an existential thing, right? Because there's sort of 2 lines of thinking from India's point of view. Do you just stick to what you're good at, or do you kind of play the horses for courses and play to the conditions in Perth where you do play that extra quick? I kind of like where India are at. They're just going to back their 2 spinners to enjoy the extra bounce. I think someone like Jadeja will enjoy the bounce of Perth. Ashwin's a little bit more side spinny in his approach to off-spin bowling, but I can see how it would work. I think it probably comes down to a pride thing a little bit for Gambier as well, who's already on the hot seat. I mean, after that home clean sweep defeat to New Zealand. So if it backfires, it's going to only draw more questions on the selection. But I don't entirely hate it. I think if they're going to win this test and indeed the series, I think India kind of have to stick to what's worked with them, irrespective of the conditions in some ways. I think they've just got to sort of back themselves and back their own kind of push rather than reacting too much to the surface that they'll be at the mercy of.
I mean, there's no doubt that Australia are vulnerable to decent spin bowling, not even great spin bowling. I mean, you look at Moeen Ali, who was picked in the Ashes for England last year. He's not a great bowler, but he took some vital wickets and maybe even turned that Headingley Test match in Australia's favour. So I think actually it is a good tactic picking Jadeja and Ashwin and just saying, see if you're good enough.
Moeen Ali has over 200 Test wickets, and you still don't think he's a good bowler.
Well, I don't think he's of the class of Ashwin or Jadeja, so they're both better.
Fair enough. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a surprise. And again, it opens up that India's problem of not having a guy who's ready. They went away. They didn't pick Shardul Thakur, who was instrumental. Last time they won at the Gabba, even the World Test Championship match at the Oval, he featured. I think he picked up 4 or 5 wickets in the match, scored a 50, batting at number 8. And they wanted to move on. He's 32 years of age, but India don't have a replacement who they believe in. I don't think they're quite, Nitish Kumar Reddy is quite there. He didn't perform to as per expectation. If he probably had a really good A series, they might even pick him, just like they were going to pick with Padikkal. So, with two, just listening to the Perth curator as well, Menas, it seems like this pitch isn't going to crack. It's not going to be as rock hard. There is a bit of rain forecast. It has been raining yesterday. There's a chance of showers today. This test match compared to last year is about a month earlier. And the conditions are only going to be sort of like 22, 23 degrees as well for the first couple of days. So I think India and probably taken all those consideration and experienced, and they want to play Ashwin as well. So I think a little bit surprising, but when you put all that logic into place, it sort of tends to make sense.
Yeah, the Perth curator did say in the lead up to this test match that last year's pitch started to crack too early, and they were going to try and make it hold together a bit longer. But I think it's a bit of a lottery from the sound of the curator. I don't know if he can guarantee the results.
The old hedge, you reckon?
Yeah. I didn't mention it, but obviously a huge loss for India. Shubman Gill is out with a hand injury. Also, Rohit Sharma's missing the game. So, I mean, you've got 2 really important elements of their top 6 not there. So I do think that opens the door a little for Australia in this test match. Daniel?
It will only... I think it's really important for someone like a Dhruv Jurel to really stand up early and make a decent first impression. And I know there's a good chance he potentially plays the whole series as a batter as well. But I think looking at the India 11, irrespective of the guys missing, there's just a lot of stroke players in that top 6. You almost need a Pujara type player to kind of stick around and anchor. And Jurel, from what I've seen, limited given the A series and the brief test experience, what I have seen is it looks like he's able to sort of weather the storm, and when the chips have been down a little bit, he's been able to kind of dig in and put in a shift for the team. And that could prove crucial, I think, in this series, because for all of the stroke playing talent that they've got in the India group, there is a worry that, they could get bowled out in 2 sessions because they're almost so brash and so happy to swing the bat around. So, look, it might be a case of him playing all 5 tests, but I think obviously in this first particular test with no Gill and no Sharma, that his input, assuming that he plays, is crucial to them sticking around. They're going to have to basically get off to a great start. I know Perth is obviously going to be a tough place to come to first, and Brisbane will be as well, but that could be a key in just weathering the pace storm of the Australian attack in pretty juicy conditions.
Gav, this Indian team, last time they came to Australia, what I think struck many people was the fact that they got so many injuries but were able to fill the gaps. I mean, will that be the same in this first test? Gill and Sharma out. Do you think the cattle coming in, and obviously no Mohammad Shami, so you've got Pradeep coming in, we know Siraj. I mean, do you think they can, step up in this series?
They can, but it's a lot different to 3 or 4 years ago. You remember that series was played on back of like COVID. A lot of the Australian bowlers hadn't had any sort of game time. The Indian players had been to the IPL. They were training on their own. So completely different. Remember, India were based out here for about 14 days, and they had a long camp in Blacktown. So, and it's not something they've done here. I think there was a lot of, like team unity then. They were locked up in hotel rooms for 14 days. So I believe there was a different bond there. Ravi Shastri, the leader, was instrumental. I don't think that he's different, Gautam Gambhir, as a coach. In fact, he's never been the head coach. He came from KKR, which he's a mentor there. He's not a head coach, so he's always had somebody play that role. So, and he hasn't been off to a good start. So they can definitely stand up. But I think, I just feel like Australia is just so much in a better, set up so much differently. Like I mentioned last week, Menes, the bowlers are raring to go. The whispers are from, the Australian sort of the conditioning coaches and so forth. This is as fit as, Hazelwood, Stark and Cummins have ever been leading up into Australian summer for 4, 5, 6 years. So I think that's what's going to work against India, and plus the schedule. So they can step up. I know they can step up, but I just feel, we're probably going to see India next time around with the Jurels and the Gills probably at the peak of their powers. I think they're just in that transition. We're going to see a couple of good knocks. And as Dan said, it's a great opportunity for those guys, but I don't think it'll be enough to win the series. I think it'll be similar to, 2014 with the Pujaras, the Rahanes, and, sort of Kohlis. They were sort of around that age of, like 24, 23. And then they really peaked next to time. So I think that peak will come for this team maybe next time they come to these shores.
Wow, interesting. I'm wary of India because I think they lift in Australia, unlike other teams. They get so much support here. It's almost like playing at home without the pressure of playing at home. It's very interesting. And actually, I was at the Australia v Pakistan T20 game on the weekend at the SCG, and it was full of supporters from Pakistan. It was chockers. There were a few Australian supporters, but it was dwarfed by the amount of supporters from Pakistan. It gave me a real insight into what's going to come for this Indian series. And some of the Pakistan players said it almost felt like playing at home. So, yeah, it's interesting what you say about some younger players sort of on their first tour could have a different effect on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the support's going to be phenomenal. Perth's probably going to be the least, and Brisbane probably the least amount of Indian supporters. But you think about Adelaide, and know lots of people going from Sydney to that Adelaide Test match. Melbourne's going to be full, and Sydney, of course. But the support, that's the 12th man. You can say that, but at least it's all about execution in the middle. And I don't think this team quite has that yet. And just to face the waning powers of a Kohli and Ashwin and maybe even a Jadeja. Look, I understand the Australian public being wary of the Indian team given what they produced 3 or 4 years ago, but I think that's a rarity. I don't think you're never going to experience a series like that again. I think that's the side of precaution. I think we might sit back here in 4 weeks and we said, oh, well, actually, it turned out what we wanted to say, but we weren't brave enough to say it.
Yeah, interesting. And well, that's why your book's called The Miracle Makers, Gav, because it was a miracle when they won last time. I mean, Daniel, I think for Australia, there's a lot of legacy at stake here for this current crop of Australian players. They haven't held the Border-Gavaskar trophy since 2017. A lot of these players might retire in the next couple of seasons. So this could be their last opportunity to win back the Border-Gavaskar trophy. So I think it's a huge legacy piece for the Australian team.
It'd be interesting to see how much pressure they kind of feel in that camp regarding all of that. I mean, it's easy for them to kind of brush it off when you're asking them about it. But, the truth of the matter is it's a bit of a final frontier for this generation. They've got a World Test Championship title. They've had relative success away from home in England, but India has been the Achilles heel, whether it be at home or away. I mean, the last 2 series, in fairness, one of them without Warner and Smith might have an asterisk, but there wasn't really an excuse for losing the last series. And I mean, if anything, the added sort of conditions of COVID, it just seemed like India were better in adjusting to those new situations, unlike, say, England when they came out and basically used it as the excuse. So it's a good chance to right some wrongs for the Australians, and they'll probably feel it a little bit. I think looking at the likes of this bowling attack, it's probably one thing they just want to tick off from all the achievements that they've had in the game. But it'll come through hard work. India will give the opportunities, but it's about Australia and a new look slip cordon as well, being up to taking those chances and actually putting together totals of note to ensure that they kind of keep India out of the game. I think the likes of Bumrah against, the two openers, one being a left-hander and Khawaja swinging the ball away, and then one being a new face in Nathan McSweeney, who's never seen anything close to Bumrah before, as good as he is coming into the team. We could be exposed in that middle order quickly in certain matches. So I think there will be a little bit of pressure, and it's just about being able to kind of toil through the hard stages, particularly against the new ball, where that's where Australia can potentially, really make a move in the series, especially early.
Yeah, the other thing, is, as Dan said, talk about bowlers. Yes, there's that asterisk series, no Warner and Smith, but Australia still had these four bowlers. Last series, Australia still had these four bowlers. They couldn't bowl India out on their fifth day in the third test match. They couldn't, defend a target of, I think, 370 on the final day at the Gabba. So, yes, we can say that Marnus is out of nick. Steve Smith is not what he is. Travis Head, Mitchell Marsh probably haven't had the best last 12 months. Been saying that, these are Australia's greatest try of fast bowlers, but if there's one country that they've struggled against, it's India, and that too on their own, on their own turf. So I think it's vital for these three. We might look back on history and say, if India is to pull off another miracle, then say, well, how come Stark, Cummins, and Hazelwood couldn't perform against India on their own deck?
No, it's a good point. A very good point. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll get into our series predictions. There's still a slight interference on your mic, Gav, but we'll just push through it. I think it's the phone. But anyway, we'll just finish this one. All right. Welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. It is now time for our series predictions. We'll go around the room. I'll start with you, Daniel. What do you think will be the series result?
I'm taking a little bit of inspiration from Ravi Shastri here. He said that it would be 3-1, but he wasn't sure which way it was going to go. I think it'll be 3-1. I think it'll be Australia's 3-1. I think there'll be enough inclement weather somewhere to deny a match. I think there'll be 4 results elsewhere. I think India's tactics will work somewhere. I'm not sure where. Maybe Adelaide is probably my prediction. I think Australia overall will get the job done. Taking 20 wickets will be, I think, easier this time around from an Australian point of view, but I'm a little bit more worried about the batting. I think it'll be probably close. So India will probably think that they're in 2 or 3 of those test matches that they ultimately lose, but I'll say Australia 3-1. Like
it. Gav, what about you?
I think Australia 4-1.
Australia 4-1?
Yep.
But it's going to rain in Sydney, Gav. It'll rain in Sydney.
Yeah, by then India would have shot themselves in the foot, so there will be no contest. It will be like one of those Ashes series where it's a beautiful batting wicket and the visitors just collapse. It's been too long. You just want to go home. So I'm going 4-1. I'm supremely confident with this Australian team at the moment.
Wow. Well, I have been tossing and turning about this prediction. I can't separate these teams at the moment. I actually think there's more issues with this Australian team than we're letting on, especially with the batting. But I do think the 3 fast bowlers are going to be under the pump, playing 5 test matches in 7 weeks. So I've gone for a 2-all series, with rain in Sydney being a draw, and India then will go home with the Border-Gavaskar trophy. I think it's going to be a series where India competes. They don't win, but they do enough to take home the trophy. And why I've come to that prediction is I think India will get better as the series goes on. Everyone's saying Australia will just, start strong in Perth and then Adelaide and Brisbane, and they'll just blow India away. Well, I think we've seen enough that it's pretty impossible to blow India
Where,
away.
where do India win?
Well, okay, I think they could win at the MCG. So there's one. And then I think they could steal one of the first games. Maybe the Adelaide Test, even at the Gabba. I just think Australia's batting is vulnerable. Obviously they'll go back to the Gabba with great memories of winning last time they were there, or they win at the SCG on a bit of a turner. And but I still think it'll be 2-2. I think we'll get a draw somewhere with weather, and I think it'll be punch for punch. I think Australia's batting is going to be a bit ropey. I have no confidence in our aging top order.
I agree with you, but I just don't see enough from India. That's my issue. I just I understand where you're coming from, and if it was the same Indian team, coming out sort of maybe 3 summers ago, I think maybe even a 3-2 either way. But I just don't see enough in India. I just feel Australia I think they're just. I don't know where that one is going to be. That one probably won't be in Sydney. I just think it's going to be 4-1. So all sorts of predictions from all 3 of us.
Absolutely. It's a good one. All right, Daniel, leading run scorer for each team.
I will say Travis Head for Australia. I think just coming in and counter-attacking in certain situations, I think he'll really enjoy this series and the situations that he finds himself in. I think it'll be someone batting between 5 and 7 for Australia who will actually carry the team in some ways. From an Indian point of view, I think it's a little bit more open for discussion, and with Sharma and Gill out the first test, it probably handicaps them a little bit. I will reluctantly say that despite missing the first test, Rohit Sharma will lead the run scoring for India, purely because I don't really see a front runner. I think Kohli's not quite in form. I think some of the new guys coming in, I think the likes of Jarrell could have a good series, a good first impression here. Shubman Gill the same, but he's also missing that first test. I say it with no certainty, but I'll say Sharma for now. I'm not gonna put any money on it though.
I like it. I'm not asking you to, Dan.
No, I'm not allowed to. So,
Gav,
I think for India, Jaiswal, I think he'll just be the leading run scorer. And for Australia, just get a feeling that it'll be Marnus. I think it won't be lots of runs, but I think Australia's probably going to have those, like 3 or 4 players in that around that 300 run mark. And I think Marnus is just going to, how Marnus is, he'll get a couple of catches which will be dropped off him, and he'll just eclipse some of the other ones.
Poor old Marnus having a rough trot. I think Crash read out his figures on the radio today, and he's averaging around 30 in Test cricket for the last 20 Test matches. So he does need a big series. Well, my prediction, you stole one of mine, Gav. I'm going for Jaiswal as well. Anyone that's seen him play in the last sort of year for India knows what a talent he is. I think he'll enjoy the new ball, the field up, Australian fast bowlers coming at him. So I'm going to go Jaiswal as well. And then for Australia, I'm going Nathan McSweeney. I think McSweeney is going to come out and he's going to show Ed Cowan that it wasn't a guess, and he's going to be the leading run scorer. Get in there early, and we need a breakout star. We need a Mark Taylor in 1989 or a Michael Clarke in 2004. That's what Australian cricket needs, and I'm backing my man McSweeney.
Can I quickly flag a Jaiswal concern I have very briefly? I looked back at the tour to South Africa that they had, and he got out 3 times out of 4 innings to Nandre Burger. Now, one of them was in a quick fire chase, so I'll take that one out. But the 2 dismissals in Centurion, Nandre Burger, left arm new ball bowler, I think Jaiswal versus Mitchell Starc in this series could dictate it in some ways. I think that'll be definitely one to watch. And I think I sort of like Starc in this particular series. So that's one to keep an eye on, and probably one reason why I'm a little bit colder on Jaiswal than you two. Obviously a class talent, though.
Yeah, Jaiswal has hit about 6,000 balls between coming to Australia. So I just had somebody tell me that a couple of days ago. So 6,000 balls is a lot, and then he's probably had more net sessions here. So I get it. Instead of Starc or anybody, I just feel like he's so side on. I feel like he's so prone to instead of his balls will go square into that gully area, and I think he's a big candidate. If he can sort himself out, I think he'll still get enough run. I think when he gets a ton, it will be a big one, and I think that's why he'll just be the leading run scorer. I think that he's definitely going to score 100. It could be 2.
Like it a lot. All right, now bowler prediction time. Leading wicket taker for both teams. I'm going to go first. I am predicting Josh Hazlewood for Australia. I think just steady. He's going to pick up wickets all series. And I'm going Ashwin for India. As I said before, I think Australia are vulnerable to good spin. And I think Ashwin has... he's due for a big series here. This definitely be the last time he comes, you would imagine, as a test cricketer. And I think he'll pick up wickets right throughout the series. Gav, you want to go next?
I think Mitchell Starc. I think Starc is going to have a big summer. I think it's as well as he's bowled. And, you look back at the Ashes, even last year, he just has a knack of taking those wickets. I think Starkey. For India, look, it's easy to say Bumrah. I just can't see anyone taking more wickets than him. So I think I don't think Ashwin watches a lot of YouTubes and podcasts. So he'll be happy to hear that you're predicting him to play at least 5 Test matches. So I don't think even he's predicting that. So he'll be in your camp. And I think end of the Test series, I think we're going to see Ashwin, Menners, and McSweeney having dinner somewhere in Rose Bay. So that'll be a good thing to watch.
Danny, what do you think?
I think mine are exactly the same. I got to double down on Starc after the comment, and
okay.
I think Bumrah from India's point of view. I just think the theme of this series is going to be new ball wickets and how the teams sort of react from a batting point of view to kind of salvage decent totals or decent chases, whoever bats first, bats second, whatever. So I think I've got to double down on Starc. I think he will have an enjoyable series against an Indian batting lineup who are a little bit shell-shocked after the New Zealand series. We know there were different ways that they were broken down in that particular series, but I think Starc will enjoy it. And I think, Bumrah just obviously bringing something different to the table for the likes of Nathan McSweeney. And I just think he'll be able to break into that top order, into that middle order and make hay with the new ball.
Like it. Well, they were our predictions. And final thing before we go, just on this first Test match, who's got more at stake? I actually think Australia have more at stake in this first Test match. At home, they've got the schedule they wanted, and they need to start strong. Whereas India have proven that they actually can get bowled out for 36 and come back from that. Now, Gav's made a good point. Totally different coach, totally different situation. But I think for this first Test match, if India come out of the block strong, I think it'll rattle the Australians a little. Whereas I think if Australia wins in Perth, it's expected. What do you guys think?
You're right, Menace. And I think that the other question mark about, how hungry are these Indian players? Even like Rishabh Pant, Ashwin, Jadeja, Kohli, yes, Rohit. But, at the end of the day, they were part of history the last couple of times. So are they really hungry? That's my question mark.
Good one. All right, guys. Well, I reckon we'll wrap that up. Listeners, thanks for tuning into the Cricket Unfiltered podcast for our series preview number 2. We'll be back at the end of every day's play for a wrap. Lots of guests coming in from all around the world to discuss the play. I can't wait. I'm going to be tuned in on Friday with very, very excited feelings running through my body. That's all I can say.
Good way to end the podcast.
Daniel, you take care. Gav, take care. Listeners, tune in during the series because it's going to be a ripper.